Before the world told you who to be, you existed unapologetically. So who's beneath the noise? You don't have to live by someone else's definition.
When was the last time you've heard your own voice without the world telling you how to speak? Imagine going into a room with yourself. Honestly, would you be able to answer the question, who are you? What we've come to find is what you think is who you are. What consumes you is who you are. What you think about before you go to bed is who you are. And most importantly, who are you when you're alone? What do you think about when you're alone?
You're identified by your choices. Take Erik Erikson. He's a psychologist and he developed the theory of psychology. And it's basically saying that identity is formed throughout time. You're not bound by your early experiences. A lot of times people tell you that once a this, always a that, or you are who you hang around, or birds of a feather, or whatever the case may be, whatever cliche tries to lock you into an identity that you don't identify with anymore. But the truth is, you are able to redefine yourself at any time that you feel necessary. The only thing we suffer from is caring about the people around us that are trying to bind us into this position that no longer serves us. So when you ask yourself who you are, understand that even through psychology, you have the right and the authority to redefine it.
You see, what I've come to realize is we're using the wrong word, right? The word identity comes from the Latin meaning of same or sameness, meaning it has no change, which is why you find yourself stagnant, because this word identity simply just means same. We're using the wrong word. We know that Chad at 2 years old was not the same Chad at 12 years old. We know that Chad at 12 years old was not the same Chad at 22 years old, and so on and so forth. So we need to throw that word identity out the window. Stop using it. We need to be asking the question, what is introspect? What is introspect? Introspect is the observation and the examination of one's own self's mental and emotional processes. That is the question we need to be asking to identify, who are you? Who am I? Think of the word introspect, not identity, because identity will leave you falling in the pits of sameness. This is why you see yourself never completing your milestones, because you're falling into the identity of sameness. You're falling into the identity of yourself, which never changes. So don't even utter those words anymore.
And also understand that authenticity is power. Understand congruence. Congruence is who we are and how we live these things out in reality. Not on the internet, not with family, not with friends. We have to be congruent to what we really identify with within. There is a connection to this that correlates to your greater well-being, how you exist in this world and how you experience joy and happiness and fulfillment. And a lot of us suffer from feeling unfulfilled and we lack purpose because we don't practice congruence, because we don't live in a reality that's serving what our inner being wants to be and how that person wants to show up in the real world. You have to understand that when you are performative and you're performing for others around you, for them to either accept you, for them to for you to fit in, which is a synonym to that, or for them to want to be around you, for you to be admirable or influential, you find yourself in a place that is rhetoric, because you're looking in the mirror and you're not identifying there. And then you look around you and how people view you, you don't identify outwards either. And there's a quote, it's in relation to the Bible. But if you try to fit in with the world, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you try to fit in with the world, not only will you be rejected by God, but you'll be rejected by the people that you're trying to fit in with. You have to really ask yourself, what in your surrounding environment actually serves you? And you have to be cutthroat enough to say, if it doesn't serve you, you need to leave it alone.
But what if I feel like it serves me? What if I feel like this is my purpose? What if I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing? What if I feel like everything that is empowering me is serving me. I feel like this, I feel like that, and I want to do this and I want to do that. How do I pull myself from that? How do I get away from that to know that that is not where I'm supposed to be headed? You're saying I need to go in this direction, but I feel that I'm supposed to go in this direction. So how do you identify that?
Well, the cool thing about congruence is that there's a tethering between you and your will, what you want, and reality, what's existing around you. And that tethering, the string gets very thin the further these two concepts get away from each other.
Okay.
So the thing is, you have to learn how to listen to yourself, but not your feelings. Because we as people are created behind the image of our creator. And our creator is a being that is just. He exists within the rule and law that he's created. And therefore, you function at your highest capacity doing the same. So if you understand the rule or how you identify, Tyshe is a happy woman. Tyshe enjoys being a mother. Tyshe enjoys the duty that has been called upon her life. If that's the rule, if that's the identity, then my reality follows. And after my reality follows, then my feelings follow. But a lot of us lead with our feelings.
Yeah.
We lead with wanting to feel good prior to doing any practices that would correlate to that feeling. You lay in bed all day. You see no sunshine, you have no company, but you don't understand why you're in a slump. You don't understand why you feel unproductive or depressed. These things are correlated to the fact that your reality is not serving you.
Exactly. And I want to touch on what is, some other steps and some other things for you guys to think about, trying to figure out who you are, right? And I gave you the word introspect. And I want to give you something else to dwell on. Education. Education, 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 education. But where does the word education come from? Education comes from the Latin word of eudico. What does eudico mean? Eudico means to induce or to develop within. So the word education is deeper than just going to school, going to a brick and mortar, for 4 to 5 years to get a degree. Right? Education is not just necessarily a person who has the knowledge of something general or something that they specialize in. That's not what makes you an educated person. An educated person is someone who has the developed faculties in their mind that may acquire them the things that they want or equivalent, but without sacrificing the rights of others. An educated person is a person who can get what they want out of life without being selfish. That's education. We are trying to educate ourselves selfishly. We are trying to educate ourselves by knowing a little bit of this, knowing a little bit of that. But in fact, you see the most educated people are typically the people who work the less, the people who work, in your eyes, minimum compared to you. They don't work in the warehouses. Why? Because they figured out that if I can figure out how to acquire and obtain the things that I want out of life, or equal to it, without violating my neighbor's rights, I beat the game of life. That's how you beat the game of life. And on top of that, you figured out how to do that without being selfish. Think about that. That's why a lot of the times you find people who are multimillionaires, multi-billionaires, never went to college. But this does not mean that they're not educated. You have a lot of people who are educated because they got bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctorate degrees. But like I just said, education comes from the Latin word of eudico, which literally means to induce or to develop within. I can develop within myself without a brick and mortar, I can develop within myself. Without a law degree, I can develop within myself. Without a bachelor's degree. So this word education, they have told you, is going to school for 4 years after high school, becoming a doctor or a lawyer after 10 to 12 years of my life. Not that these things are wrong, but it does not necessarily mean that you are educated because you can wave up this piece of paper. It simply just means you went to school for 12 years. It does not mean that you were educated, because the person who dropped out, that decided to induce themselves with 1,000 books, and that 12 years you spent on that one book of nursing, I promise you, they will find themselves more educated than you are, because they decided to develop themselves within. Because what I have come to realize through research is there's actually 8 continents on this earth. 8. You may say, there's only 7. Yes, there's only 7. But when you find out who you actually are, you'll realize that there's 8. Because that 8th continent is sitting right here in your brain. The location of your brain is the 8th continent on this earth. Meaning that 8th continent is actually infinite, because it is the only continent that can go to one continent after another, after another, after another, after another. You can go to North America, South America, Antarctica, Australia, Europe, Africa, Asia, and still take that 8th continent with you. And that 8th continent allows you to go anywhere in the world and develop, whether it's developing within yourself, developing others, teaching others. And this is how you figure out who you are. This is how you empower yourself within. It's unlocking that 8th continent.
You have to learn how to listen to yourself, but not your feelings. Because we as people are created behind the image of our creator. And our creator is a being that is just. He exists within the rule and law that he's created. And therefore, you function at your highest capacity doing the same. So if you understand the rule or how you identify, Tyshe is a happy woman. Tyshe enjoys being a mother. Tyshe enjoys the duty that has been called upon her life. If that's the rule, if that's the identity, then my reality follows. And after my reality follows, then my feelings follow. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us lead with our feelings. Yeah. We lead with wanting to feel good prior to doing any practices that would correlate to that feeling. You lay in bed all day, you see no sunshine, you have no company, but you don't understand why you're in a slump. You don't understand why you feel unproductive or depressed. These things are correlated to the fact that your reality is not serving you.
Exactly.
You have to understand that you exist beyond labels. Your brain is, as Malik calls it, the 8th continent. As I call it, the strongest battery in the world. The brain powers everything. The human brain is one of the most powerful sources of energy that God has ever given. And there's a reason we can't tap into the full capacity of it, because that's very intense. But while understanding that our brain may not be able to tap into the full capacity of its capability, we understand that it does exist beyond labels. Whatever someone has labeled you to be, you're greater than that. You're greater than anything you can conceive within yourself. You have to push past your doubt. You have to push past the things that you feel are holding you back. You have to understand that you are not only capable, but you are designed to be great. And I don't mean great in the cliche way or the ordinary thing you hear every day. How you doing today? I'm doing great. No, great as in you're meant to build empires. You're meant to change the world. And I heard someone once say, not everybody is meant to change the world. But guess what? You are. And you're not everybody. And so, in the essence of who, the question is,
who are you?